Good morning. Is there anybody here that's as happy to be here as I am? Give yourselves a hand. And I want to thank you, Reverend Christina. You know, when Reverend Christina came to Nashville, one of my dear friends in Chicago started talking about her. That's right, we were talking about people. But it was all good. It was all wonderful. And we invited her to be part of a conference we were doing called our Ministers Development Conference that the International New Thought Alliance does. We were going to do it in February, and with some COVID happenings, that's now in October. But you're still on the schedule. You know that, right? All right. And also, Dawn, I have to say this because she started this morning with a song called "I'm Only Here for God." And just out of curiosity, because I live in Mount Juliet. Do a lot of things other places, but I'm Nashville area. How many here remember J. Karen Thomas? Okay, several of you. The last person I heard do that song live was J. Karen. And that just touched my heart to hear that song again. So thank you so much. And if you didn't know J. Karen, she's got some videos that are on YouTube, and she has gone to the next expression of life now. But let me tell you, she was an absolute blessing. So that having been said, before I get in the message, I do want to mention one thing. International New Thought Alliance. In 2019, we were right here in this facility, and we did our World Congress here. We'd just gone through a huge change of leadership. Someone who had been at the helm for 25 years or longer had made his transition. And during that time, that long with the same leadership, we found that we didn't have the attendance we once had. And we changed things around. We had a really great time here. Some of you were here, were part of it. Ricky, you were part of it, and you're smiling as you think of it. Well, then we had a couple of years of COVID. I went from being the first vice president, which I was elected to that position the year we were here, to being president of it. And we put together something new for our Congress this year. We called our annual get together, our World Congress. This is our 107th one. We're a 108-year-old organization. We missed 1 year having one during World War II. All right? But I said, it's time to come together. And we decided to reach out to the leadership in all the different New Thought organizations and put something together that I believe is just one of the most spectacular lineups that in New Thought. We have from Unity, I'll lead with Unity since I'm in a Unity church. Okay, Shad Groverland, who is the executive director of Unity Worldwide Ministries. I think I got his title correct. All right, and then also we have Reverend Jim Blake, who is a friend of mine, and I just absolutely love him. He is the CEO of Unity Headquarters. Then I have some people here that I know are familiar with Centers for Spiritual Living. We have Reverend Edward Volhoom, if I pronounce his last name correctly, and he assures me that I do. He is the spiritual leader, which used to be a term they called president. And when the two organizations came together, they kind of had almost like having two presidents. The other one's called their field leader. That's Reverend Sunday Cote. They're both going to be there. Michael Beckwith will be on the schedule there. Okay? So we've really put these people together. We came together, we talked, and I could go on. But that's in July. Everyone can remember this. newthoughtevents.org. newthoughtevents.org. What did I say? newthoughtevents.org. You'll find there not only what INTA is doing, but because we want to see us all work together. We all have things that are unique. Unity has things that are unique. You're not going to go to a Center for Spiritual Living and talk about the 12 powers. That's something that you'll find in Unity churches. Centers for Spiritual Living, they do prayer a little bit differently with some of the steps. We all have something unique, and we're unique individuals. We learn that way. But when we collaborate and we come together for the common good and for the common good of humanity. So that's what it's all about. And I just like it. We used to have congresses that were 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000. We even had one time that went over 5,000 people. So we actually have the facilities that we can seat that many if we want to in Chicago. So come up in July. All right. I did want to mention that. You can find more about it. You'll find events that other people do there as well. That being said, do I have my PowerPoint up? Good. Today I said we'd talk about the ingredients for success. And success can be kind of like making a cake or cooking something. You've got to have everything that comes together. And if you're missing an ingredient, it sometimes just doesn't turn out right. Anybody in here make biscuits from scratch? Yeah, you do, yeah. My grandmother used to do this, and I was told the story of and you've got to understand now, my father was in his 50s when I was born, so my grandparents were old and from a time when they, went down and bought the 5-gallon thing of lard. And she didn't measure anything when it came to making biscuits, and she needed that lard in the biscuit dough. She just put her fingers down in there and she bent them a little bit. As she called it, she crooked her fingers and would pull some out and make the biscuits. And the price of lard had gone up, and my grandfather one day looked at her and said, how much of that are you using? She said, I don't know, I just crooked my fingers. He said, well, maybe you shouldn't crook them quite so much. And so the next time she got ready, she just went over and stuck her fingers straight down in the lard and pulled them straight out. And those biscuits were dry and just crumbled, and they were horrible. So he decided it was okay to crook those fingers a little bit then, okay? When you're getting ready to do something in life, be sure to grab everything that you need to make it a success. And when we look at the ingredients for success, I'll start with one question. I guess I should point toward that, not my screen. And that's the question, what exactly are we talking about? What is success? If I went around today, I bet I would get at least 25 different answers to that. Now, I have a thing, I collect coffee mugs. Not expensive ones, just things that have something on them I like. My whole collection would probably sell for $1.25 at a good yard sale. But very early on, when my wife and I got together, before she found out that what I call collecting those mugs, she calls hoarding them, she actually gave me one that said, that man is a success who brings out the best in others and gives the best of himself. How many of you like that? I like that. That's been an inspiration to me through the years. If you look, and I have it written here, matter of fact, I think I have it on the screen here. Oh, I don't. That the definition from Webster is that success is the satisfactory accomplishment of a desired goal. That's pretty good. One thing is sure, success is more than trying to, as the expression goes, keep up with the Joneses. It's more than that. For our purposes today, I'm going to say that success is using your creative genius to accomplish the needs and aspirations that come from your heart. Look at somebody and say, my creative genius, your creative genius. How many of you know that's part of who you are? It's spirit within you, right? Somebody nod your head. I hadn't put everybody to sleep yet, have I? All right. But when you begin to let that come up, your natural talents and abilities, when you express them in a way that brings happiness, joy, love into your experience, and it brings you success in whatever it is you decide to do. There are different ways that we can do this. But if you're going to do it, you have to realize one of the key ingredients to it is our self-image. It says self-image is the key ingredient to successful living. Now, I'm going to have heard it's done unto you as you believe. That ever been said from this pulpit before? No. You've never said that, have you? All right. It's done unto you as you believe. For those of you who may know me, I studied hypnosis and became even an instructor in it. And one of the first things that they said to us when we started talking to it is that we will live up to or down to. Everyone lives up to or down to their belief about themselves. All right? As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. That includes women. That includes the very deepest level of our being. We live up to or down to that. So what is that self-image about? Well, one thing is whatever your self-image is, and this comes from, how many are familiar with Maxwell Maltz? Maxwell Maltz, remember that name? I know one person in this house. Anybody in here ever read a book called Psycho-Cybernetics? All right, he wrote that. He was a medical doctor. And this is a quote from him. He said, all your actions, feelings, and behavior, even your abilities, think about that for a second, even your abilities are always consistent with your self-image. Now, let me just check. He did say with that, though, that your self-image can be changed. Another one of his statements, a few pages later. He said, your self-image can be changed. You're not stuck with it. And one is never too young or too old. One never has something from their past or any other thing. It's not about some limitation that you think you have. Anyone can do that, change their self-experience, their self-image, and begin to experience life in a more successful way. Now, one of the things that Maxwell Maltz did is he was in on something that in the late 1950s, early 1960s became really popular. And that's when they really started doing plastic surgery. Pretty common thing today. And it wasn't brand new, but it began to be used more so that someone, that the young kid who had the ears that stuck out and he got teased in school. Anybody in here ever get teased? You don't have to hold your hand up to that. Most of us had something, okay? But what they found is that when people would have surgery and that kid who had the big ears sticking out, they were able to change that. Or the woman who had a nose that she didn't like, and they could change that. That in some cases, the entire personality changed. The entire personality, even their character changed. Think about that for a second. Their personality, their character, people became more successful. A salesperson who just felt that he didn't really look the part, one of them became one of the top in his company. And he said, what is this magic? And so they would do surgeries, and then some people would come in and have a very successful surgery, and they would look in the mirror and they would say, oh, you didn't change a thing. I remember in my own experience and practice when I was doing hypnotherapy, I used to have a psychiatrist. I had a knack for working with people who were bulimic, not anorexic, but bulimic. And I had a psychiatrist at Vanderbilt who would actually refer people to me. And this one girl who came in, she was so thin that on the day she came in, and she actually wasn't referred, and normally I would always get a referral. I decided to start work with her that day because I wanted to get her before she ended up in the hospital. And I saw her literally just like every other day. And after a few days, she started to eat, and she came in one day with tears in her eyes, and she said, I looked in the mirror for the first time and saw what looked like a Holocaust victim staring back at me. She said, always before, I looked in the mirror and I saw someone who was fat. This was a college-age student who weighed less than her 11-year-old sister. Okay? She saw something different than reality. And her image of herself was different. And when she began to see the reality of it, something changed. Well, the same thing was true of these people who sometimes had very successful surgeries, but they couldn't see the difference. Their personality didn't change. Some, it might fail. The surgery would fail. They did nothing, but the person really thought it worked, and they had this wonderful change. All right? It was the same thing with one person that they had a scar in the face, and they did a very successful surgery, and they saw this. But they studied a fencing club, and I want to say it was from Spain. I mean, I could be, you'd have to read the book to be certain on this. But in that fencing club, literally, it was one of the things that they apparently, when they would start it, somebody would get nicked on the cheek, and they would end up with a little scar. And that was a sense of pride. And they found that having the scar that brought the pride did the same thing for them as removing it did for another. So it had nothing to do with the outer. It had everything to do with an in. Now, in this metaphysical type teaching, how many have ever heard the expression, change comes from where? Exactly. It has to be something that changes within. And it was that. It was the self-image that was changing. How they looked at and how they perceived themselves. And again, while what many people don't think of it, but Maltz actually wrote a book that had quite a few references to spirituality and spiritual things in it. Those of you who are, I know the one person in here who's read it before. But he had a lot in there about it. All of this goes along with our teaching because why? It's what we believe about ourselves. It's what we believe. If we believe we have to fight the world and we have some enemy, then of course we do. But as we go on, you've got to have the mixing bowl. You've got to have something to put things in. So everything else I'm going to talk about right now are things that will help you build that self-image in a way that's more successful. To see yourself as that. Now, I'm a huge fan of Neville Goddard. I'm a huge fan of Neville Goddard. Those of you who know me, and I see somebody looking at me now who knows me from Facebook, and they know that you've read a little bit of Neville Goddard if you've ever looked at that page of mine. Okay. But he was like, whatever it is you want to be, assume yourself to already be it. Make yourself image that, is another way of putting it. So, let me go through here and see if I remember everything without having to go back to notes here. One of the first things in success, and again, Maltz wrote this. I've changed it a little bit. But he said to have a sense of direction, a goal or desire. That's 101 stuff. To have a direction you want to go, but it goes beyond that. And again, I can speak from a personal experience, but I used to be this type of person that everything I did, I achieved right off the start. I was a photographer back in my 20s, a portrait photographer, and I worked for a rather large company. And if you did really well, they had a way of scoring by different elements in your portraits. They had a way of scoring, and what that score was depended on how much, what percentage of the commission you got off your work that sold. Okay? And I set my goal that I wanted to be at the top. And the next thing you know, you could look, and all my ratings were at the top in the entire region, which covered about 7 states. So that meant I got paid at the top level of the commission off my stuff that sold. Okay? I did the same thing when I was in another business that I worked with independent business owners. I wanted to be in management there. And sure enough, I ended up in management there, ended up in the top 5 in the country with that. But then I didn't always stay at those levels. And what it is, once you achieve something, you've got to set a new goal. It's not just about achieving. Anybody in here still want to go to a something else in there? I'm looking around. Some of you folks in here look like you probably are enjoying life at a level you're doing what you want to when you want to. By that, I mean you don't have to punch somebody's clock. But if you're at that place in life where you still want to accomplish something in work, rather than just getting a position, it's what do you want once you get there? So many times I wanted to achieve a certain level, and once I got there, I didn't know what I wanted to do with it beyond that point. Anybody know what I'm talking about? So it's about continually moving forward. This thing that I'm talking about, being success, is like riding a bicycle. Although I have seen a few now that can do it. They can stop at a red light and be stopped still and balancing one. Anybody ever seen that? I'm not crazy. I have seen it. Okay? I have actually seen that, and it blows my mind. Because for those of us who are still in a mortal body, we have to keep the bicycle moving forward to balance it. Right? Life is the same way. If we're going to maintain success, it's always got to be forward motion. It cannot be stopping. All right, so having that sense of direction. The other thing, the next one, is understanding. I call that being clear. I went to a ministers' development conference several years ago, many years ago, over in Nashville, North Carolina. And one of the people leading that was John Waterhouse. Some of you may, if you were here in 2019, he spoke here. But John had us write, and it's all ministers, 2 things, may have been 3, but I think it was only 2 things that we would want others to know about us. I'm kind, or I'm whatever. Something about us. And John wrote one as well, and he and his wife Barbara both wrote, I am clear, on it. And my first thought is, what exactly do you mean I'm clear? Do you know the majority of things that people have issues or troubles about is when they don't have clear communication? Clear communication. And John said every time someone would say something to him from his church as a minister, and they would say something, he would repeat it back to them, making sure they were clear, that the communication had been clear. So I say you need to have an understanding not only with others, but also with yourself. When you set that goal, when you set the direction, are you clear with what's required of you? If you want to, and we have some, Nashville overall has some absolutely fabulous musicians, and you have some fabulous ones here, and I see others that I know that are that way. And when you decided you wanted to play another instrument, you didn't just think, well, I'm going to pick it up tomorrow, and by the end of the afternoon, I'm going to be the star on television, the best person that ever played it by tomorrow afternoon. Anybody ever, I did have someone one time who came in to my office, and I worked with several people. I worked with people who were on Star Search, I think it was called at that point in time, helped them with things that they had fear about and stage fright and things, and others who were singers. And I had a woman come into my office once, and I said, what exactly do you want to work on? She says, well, I want to cut an album. I said, well, that's great. And I thought it was all going to be the same thing, that I'd worked with other people. And I said, well, what exactly do you have planned for this? Tell me. She says, well, I want to do all the music on it myself, cut different tracks and put them together. She said, I want to play the keyboard on it, or the piano. She said, I want to play a guitar on it. And then she named probably a dozen other instruments. And I was so impressed. She listed off instruments. I mean, gosh, you don't have enough up here. She wanted to play it all. And I said, wow, you can play all those instruments? And she said, no. And she kind of overestimated my abilities, I think. Because I then said, I said, which ones do you play? She said, I don't play any of them yet. I said, well, what time frame do you want? Because I'm still thinking, okay, she wants to have focus and clarity about learning these. I said, what time frame have you given yourself to learn and play all these and record this album? And she says, I want to do it tomorrow. You hypnotized me, tell me I know how to play them today, and I'm going to go tomorrow and cut the album. Yes, that happened. Doesn't quite work that way, does it? So, be clear on what's required of you. Be clear with other people. And with this, one of the other things is to always, and this actually comes a little later, but remember, how you deal with other people is how you deal with yourself. Think the best rather than always being suspicious of other people's motives. All right? Because sometimes when you're like that, it's easier if you're a little bit mistaken toward the good. I will share this. I wasn't going to, but I will. It's always good to add a little something in, and I will shut up in just a minute. During one of the times that I was traveling with my work, I was up, I forget if it was northern part of Indiana or southern part of Michigan, but right there along that area. I was up there one day, pouring down rain. I mean, raining so hard I could barely see the front of the car. And I pulled into this grocery store parking lot because I wasn't about to start getting out of my car trying to go into different businesses with this for a few minutes. And as I circled around, a car stopped in front of me and their emergency flashers came on. Now, anyone who wants to know how I am with any issue, ask people who know me. Ask people who know me. You know Sheila McKeithen, some of you know. But if you want to ask anything about how I am about racial issues, you ask Sheila McKeithen. I have no qualm. Call her today and ask her. She'll tell you. She knows me. So when this car in front of me turned on the flashers in a spot that I would never have stopped and done that if my car weren't broken down. And I pull up beside it thinking, all right, well, maybe their car's just, the rain has flooded it out. Maybe they need a jump. I've got jumper cables in the back. I've got an umbrella. I'll get out and help this person if they need it. And I pulled up and I pushed the button to roll the window down on that side, and the window rolled down on the other side, and there was a lady of color. And I said, can I help you with something? And she immediately flew into me and started yelling and screaming at me and asking me, how dare you say such a thing to me? Yeah. Because she had assumed that I was the white guy who was telling a woman of color she had no right to stop there. And I literally sat there and started weeping while she was literally, I can get kind of emotional sometimes. I wept because, and I got out of the car in the rain and walked around and I said, ma'am, I didn't mean that the way you took it. I thought your car was stalled or something. I said, I actually wanted to help you, which she proceeded to read me the right act a little bit further. Okay? Yeah, you're laughing. Okay. I stopped to help and I got chewed out, okay? But I've done the same thing with other people probably over the years. So I'm not going to judge someone else because I don't know her life, okay? I don't know her experiences of the past. So I'm going to bless her in what she does. But again, if you're dealing with yourself and with other people, be clear. The next one is to have courage. And I will not go into a lot of detail with this, but having the courage to do it even whenever it seems a little bit scary. I noticed, and I've forgotten what it was, but your sign out front, something about fear, getting rid of fear on your sign out front. Anybody remember what that is out there? Fear less, love more. There you go. I noticed that pulling in, and I made a mental note. I said, I want to mention that. I should have remembered what was on it. Okay? But remember, you can love or you can fear. And when you love and you really know who you are, it's okay. We have a thing sometimes we call denials. Now, I'm not talking about being in denial, or like a friend of mine who wrote a book that literally she wrote a book. I know it's a saying, but she wrote a book called Denial is Not a River in Egypt. okay? But what I'm talking about is the type of denial that you realize whatever a situation is, but you understand it cannot keep you from experiencing life that God has intended you to experience. Having the courage and the belief in yourself, which goes to another one here, which is charity. Now, I got this, like I say, Maltz used this, and charity isn't talking about giving money, but charity was a word used, especially if any of you read the King James. I won't offend anybody if I tell this, I hope. I have a tendency to call the King James the King Jimmy. So if I say that, nobody be offended. But in the King Jimmy, they say charity for love. Faith, love, and charity, the greatest of these is charity, which we now say the greatest of these is love. Love, and I told someone this morning, I said, I want you to have a great love affair. I want you to fall in love with yourself. When you look in the mirror, I want you to be in love with that person. But you cannot do that and not love other people. If you fall in love with yourself, you'll love other people. How many of you know that? And if you want to be successful, that's a key ingredient to it. A key ingredient to it. I'm going to pick this up because I'm going to offer to give it to somebody after a while. You probably don't want it if I've stepped on it too much, do you? I made a note and I want to make sure that I right along in there on that point. Yeah. All right. So I'll go from love to the next one, which is esteem. I'm talking both about self-esteem and esteeming others. Anyone know exactly what the word esteem? What does esteem mean? Someone, anybody? I'm giving you a chance to talk back to me. Somebody take me up on that.
Seeing the value.
Ah, exactly. Seeing the value. Or as I wrote here, it's to see the value or appreciate the worth. Can you see your own self-worth? And can you see the worth of those around you? I have a saying, again, and I did this for years. I can't say it as picking it up my own. I was fortunate enough one time to be at a conference with Della Reese. And Della Reese was a New Thought minister, as well as some of you know her from her movie and acting career. And she came over and sat at the table with me. And at the time, I'd been in a head-on car collision. I'd had surgery, heart surgery, all this stuff. And I would go to church on Sunday and people asked me how I was. And I loved everybody that cared so much about me, and they were caring about me. But I would repeat the doctors, what they'd just been telling me, you know. And I told her, I said, you know, honestly, I said, I get so tired sometimes of repeating those doctors' reports. And she said to me in only a way that Della Reese could say it, when she said, why, honey? That was the way she started, why, honey? Somebody asked me how I am, I just tell them I'm blessed and so are you. All right. Now, I didn't want everybody in Tennessee to think, see, she was in California, a little bit different climate. In Tennessee, I tell them I'm blessed and so are you. Everybody would think that I was one of these preachers who was going to condemn everybody to hell for something, kind of almost. So I changed it a little bit and I just say, I'm fabulous and so are you. And what I discovered, I healed faster. My doctors were amazed. Yeah. It's just like, I won't even go into that. Some of you have heard me before. I've told this story before, but I will say my doctor, when he looked at the x-rays of my leg and the metal that was in it, he looked at it over at Vanderbilt, had me walk down the hall, and he shook his head, had me do it again. And when I got there, almost angrily, he looked at me, he says, I don't understand why you don't limp. I don't limp in my mind. That's why I don't limp in my body. Okay? That was my answer to him. And he said, that's fine. But this thing of, I'm fabulous and so are you, if I could only see that in myself, I would have been the most egotistical, stuck-up person in the whole world, and no one would have wanted to be around me. If you only see your own value and only esteem yourself, you've got to do that. See your value. But if you only do it for yourself, that's not going to bring you to a point of success in life. You've got to be to that point that you see the feeling or see the worth in others. Remember this. We are one. Is that right? God is all there is. Sound like a unity teaching? In divine science, we say that there is one that is perfect life, perfect love, perfect substance. Because even that we call matter is just spirit in form. All right? So if that's all it is, not only are we, quote, one with God, okay, but we are one with each other. And whatever our feelings are about others, we know that our feelings about ourselves are going to correspond with that. Now, you said something earlier about you weren't going to get into political stuff and didn't you say that earlier? I will say this about it. Even if you allow, and we've had some really rough times politically over the past several years, but if you allow that to start changing your feelings about others, you will change your feelings about yourself and your own self-esteem. So again, it's all about loving. Somebody say it's all about love. Can you say that again? I think about 3 or 4 of you really believe that, okay? It's all about love. It's all about love there. So when we love others and we see their self-worth, their self-value, remember, how we judge others is how we judge ourselves. It's not just doing to others as you would have them do unto you, but when you do to somebody else, you are doing it to yourself. All right. And then we have 2 more. I'll cover them quickly and hush. One is self-confidence. All right. And my favorite thing about self-confidence is a quote from Neville Goddard, which says, man's faith in God is measured by his confidence in himself. Now, that's not gender neutral, but that was Goddard saying it. Let me assure you, that's man, woman, boy, girl. It doesn't matter about anything else. You, as an individual, your faith in God will be measured by your confidence in yourself. When I wanted to build my self-esteem, let me tell you, I came from that old religion that God is way up there and you're a filthy, rotten sinner and you're just because God's good, you might scrape by. It was something to be fearful of. And when I found out what we teach, that changed my self-image and my self-worth and my self-value. Other people change it with different ways. But understand this. Even people who aren't in our teaching, who have that self-image that we talked about and see themselves a certain way, they still live up to or down to it. So if they see themselves and have a successful self-image, they're still going to experience it. They may not know why, but they'll still experience it. So it's our self-confidence, and the last one is our self-acceptance. And self-acceptance means there's no reason to pretend to be something that you're not. Accept yourself just exactly as you are. Because guess what? There's absolutely nothing wrong with you. Nothing wrong with you. You are perfectly you. I tell people that often, they've lied to you all your life. They tell you no one's perfect, but you're perfectly you. You are perfectly you. And that's all you're ever required to be in life. If you're not happy with this you as you're experiencing it, it's really not about changing who you are. It's about uncovering the real you. Because when you get that image, that real self-esteem that I talked about, that's about uncovering the reality of who you are. And when you do it, you'll find that relationships that didn't work out, suddenly they do. Put these things together, and you'll find everything begins to change. And you can experience life from a higher level, a higher perspective. I don't care who you are and where you are in life. I see at least one person here that I think's probably got enough years on them to retire. I'll pick you because I know you and I know you're retired, okay? But when, it used to be, how many of you, and I'll say this before I hush, how many of you were ever around when you'd see people retire when I was a kid, and it scared me because my dad retired when I was only 9. Yeah. How many of you saw people retire, and it seemed like they'd retire, and in a few months they died? Did any of you ever see that? Oh, yeah, people nod their head. You know what they found? Because some of them, their whole goal in life was to get through to the point of retiring. They had no further goals. Just like the first one, the sense of direction. When you reach something, set a new goal. Set a new goal. Get clear on it, what you need to do. Get clear on it with every relationship. Move forward with a boldness. Do it all in love. Value yourself, value everyone else around you. Believe in yourself. Understand who you are and accept that. And you will have all the ingredients for success. And so it is.